Welcome back to the second in our video series about how to make your life count, how to make your life matter, and how to make a significant contribution. We want you to be successful, and so we're having these little chats so that you can gain some knowledge and some wisdom. The interesting thing about that is the knowledge and wisdom are different. Knowledge is simply facts. It's awareness. It is becoming cognizant of certain things. Wisdom is knowing how to apply that knowledge in a way that matters, in a way that makes an impact. So many people are very knowledgeable. There are many university professors who are knowledgeable who have no wisdom. Nobody would go to them for advice about things, but they go to them for information. And that's basically it. So here at the beginning of the video, or close to the beginning, I want you to realize that you may get frustrated with this particular video, number 2, because it will seem kind of rambling. And yet I want you to learn to listen. Because someone told me once that you learn the most from a story. And that's really true. Now, as you listen carefully, you'll pick up a few things about building a team first. And you can say, well, why are you talking about building a team? I'm here to find out where to get my audience. I want, hundreds of thousands of people to buy my whatever, my course, my book, my record, my downloads, whatever. And if you listen to a guy named Seth Godin, who is one of those gurus that came along early and really identified something. He talks about developing your tribe. And so your audience is the outer fringes of your team. And the more you work on building your team, the more you will find your audience. I think one of the big mistakes that people make is that they believe that the internet is going to develop their audience for them. I want to challenge you on this and tell you that every significant audience that you have will be magnified by the internet, and certainly there will be people who find you through the internet, but it's not going to be the team that matters. The team that matters will make an additional effort, if they find you on the internet at all, to meet you face to face. You see, face-to-face, where human relationships are really developed, where things are important that they last. These kinds of relationships don't last on the internet. You don't find people getting married across the world and then staying faithful to each other because of a video. You see them work to live together to make the greatest, most meaningful relationship last of your lifetime. That is the reason that people have to be face-to-face. Face-to-face reveals things. Face-to-face involves you in ways that the internet simply doesn't. And so we want to encourage you to, number one, get rid of the mistake that you're going to build your whole team online, because you won't. So the most important people, the right-hand men, the people who are, or the right-hand person, I want to be politically incorrect. I like politically incorrect, but not that politically incorrect. So we'll do what we can to acknowledge that all persons are created equal, and under God they have the same value. Since I believe in God, that's an easy assumption to make, is that God makes everyone with equal value, and that we develop our own uniqueness and the way we're going to relate to other people. But some of that will relate well to others and some of it won't. So there are people that click with different people. I mean, some people will click with me and my conversational style this way, and we'll develop a team, a tribe around that. And other people will say, I can't relate to that guy at all. He's like, he doesn't have the speaker voice. He doesn't, well, right now, the stroke stole my voice, so I only have one way I can relate to you. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's a good thing because it's all we've got at the moment. And we don't work with what we don't have. And we don't make lists of what we don't have. We make lists of things that we want to accomplish and things that we want to gain and assets we want to acquire. But we don't focus on the things we don't have. We work only, and this is true of all of life, we only work with things we do have. So finding a team. When we start off, we don't have one of those. And that's the topic of this video. So first of all, we have to realize that we're going to build the most valuable parts of that team face to face eventually. And that has got to happen. So this is a very important thing to understand. What is it worth in terms of money? Sometimes it will take very little money. Sometimes you walk up to somebody and shake their hands and cost nothing. Another other time you'll get on a plane and you'll go somewhere and you'll see somebody and you're there because you know that you want that meeting. You really need that meeting. Sometimes those meetings take place across the world. Those are pretty expensive meetings. Sometimes those meetings last for days, years. Sometimes those meetings are an hour. So high price per hour, maybe not high priced per lifetime. You have to look at those things and evaluate those things. So face to face is the point I want to leave you with that. I want to tell you another story because stories are the way we communicate the real value. One of the most sought after speakers in the business world today is a guy named Simon Sinek. And he's not very cynical, pardon the attempt at a pun there, but Sinek is a wonderful speaker. If you get a chance to, I would go and check him out on YouTube. He's got some things out there. He's written some books, 5 to my knowledge to date. Very, very important books, very significant books. He's not saying things that are so different or so unique, but he is saying them well, and he's saying them in a way that relates to people right now. And so a very important speaker. I would say this, that you should never look at people who do what you do, like Simon and me. We're both speakers. We both go out and we both try to address an audience. We both talk about success. We both talk about problems in our society. We talk about things that matter. We want things to matter, both of us. And so do I look at him as my competition? Well, I just mentioned him to you, and I hope you check him out. So I don't see him as competition. I see him as wonderful extras that add to your life. As a musician, I have this problem. I meet a lot of people who are really paranoid about people either stealing their songs or people, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but the people who claim songs get stolen and so on are usually the ones that have the least to claim about. I've written over 2,500. I've heard my themes in other people's work, and I realize it's quite possible that in the limitation of 8 notes and some sounds in the middle, that in an octave, that there's some possibility that other people, creative people, could come up with similar things that I came up with. And I'm sure I've done it, and I've never consciously copied anybody. But I've heard some similarities after somebody mentions it. And I realized that, yeah, I probably was influenced by them. Influence to me is a great compliment. It's not a theft. So, but here's what I see. I see people looking a lot at other people in their field, and they're feeling like they're in competition with them. And that's something you can't afford. If you're going to make an impact with your life, you can't afford to be in competition with anyone. You are you. Your creator designed your message. It's not a mistake. It's not a duplication. And it needs to be out there. And so as you do what you do, and you develop your content, and you use your creativity to do that, be open-handed. Be giving. Because giving is a key to your success. You cannot develop a team without giving to the team. We are here sitting giving you a series of videos. Why are we doing that? We're giving it to you because we want you to reciprocate. Yes, that's our mixed motive, if you will. We have something to sell at the end of the series, but we're not here to sell it right now. We're here to give you something. And we're giving because we recognize that no one can receive anything without an open hand. You cannot hoard things and expect. If you hoard and accumulate, it's worthless. It's gold on a pile that lays underneath the dragon, and nobody ever gets to touch. Nobody ever gets to use it. It's just the selfishness involved in that destroys you. You don't become a person with content that other people need. So developing your content is really critical, that you are a giver and that you're open and that you're not stingy with recommending other people. As a musician, as I said, I tend to think in terms of wanting an audience to like my music. Well, that can lead you to trying to be better than the next musician, or it can lead you to see your next musician as a potential collaborator. There's more than one band in my record collection. When I was back as a kid, I collected thousands of records, and I had everybody from The Who to Pink Floyd to the Beatles in it. And I know those aren't Christian influences, and I know I'm a Christian, and eventually I saw that maybe those people weren't that as significant as maybe some of the others, and so some of them got traded for people like Phil Keaggy and John Fisher and Bob Bennett, and these maybe some obscure Christian artists that you don't know. I recommend you check them out. They're really good. Amazing stuff. And absolutely love some of those records. And there were others, people like Paul Clark and just a constant stream of the Maranatha original artists, people like The Way and Mustard Seed Faith and Daniel Amos, and now Terry Scott Taylor, like, is one of my very favorite people, and Mike Rowe from 77s, and there's just some tremendous artists out there. And these are people that I love to listen to, even today. I don't spend a lot of time listening anymore. I have created so much stuff, and I don't want to be necessarily influenced or, and yet these people are phenomenal. And to be open-handed and to tell you about these people are it's very important to me that I'm not a selfish, self-motivated artist, because I will lose so much value even to my own life by doing that. But by having more than one that I'm interested in, I have to recognize that my audience, my team, is going to be interested in more than one person, more than one artist, more than one song, more than one sound. And so it's helpful to be open and to be free and encouraging and excited about other people and what they're doing. And that's a given. I absolutely love it. I do track some of those people I mentioned. I stay in touch with some of them. There were artists that were influential in my career early on, like Ron Moore, who took me under his wing when I was a kid and didn't know beans about, whether my songs were any good. And he said yes, they were. And I'd already been selling some by cassette, I think, by the time I met Ron, but maybe not. He got me developed early. Anyway, he took me as very young and inexperienced, and expressed great interest in some of my songs, and encouraged me to come into the studio, and he sold me something. Just so you know, I mean, it's not like I became a client of his studio. I spent money with him to engineer my records, and I'm grateful for that. I'm glad that he did. So it's not that I'm against the idea of having something, and it's not a scam to sell something at the end after giving away a lot of stuff. Ron gave into my life, and I want to recognize that and tell you that was an amazing influence early in the day. And there were people who, people like Larry Norman, that has gone through ups and downs reputationally. It doesn't matter. The fact is, he was a phenomenal musician and created some of the best art out there. And so giving, and Randy Stonehill, Mark Hurd, Mark was in the studio with Ron. So it's an interesting community. People that we developed in those days, people that would recognize these situations. A guy named John Lowry became the leader of a band called Petra, which, if you're interested in Christian music at all, you've heard of Petra. And John eventually led that band. Gibson, who was going to play guitar on my first album and didn't for personal reasons, or he couldn't make the session. He was the founder of Petra, and so in some ways you could say it's a small community. But when John came to us, he played on my first vinyl record and also my second. Without knowing it, he was the same tracks were being used on a couple different things with a couple different mixes. But he played on he was on the first album, and he came in for sessions. He didn't at that time profess to be a Christian. He was a bar band musician in Flint, Michigan, and Ron knew of him, and Ron took him under his wing, and eventually he became what he became. But my album was the first Christian album he ever played on. Anyway, I tell you this story, but I want to get back to Simon. Simon Sinek tells this story, and I love his research because he seems to research things that cut right to the core very quickly. He talks about, in one of his videos, about how Navy SEALs are created, and how he asked the question at one point, who makes it? Who makes it as a SEAL? What are the characteristics of the person? And the SEAL commander said, it's not the tough guys. It's not the guys who come in here with something to prove. It's not somebody who think they're the best in the world already. It's the people who, when we set up the course, we don't tell them, but we set up an impossible course. And that course requires teamwork to make it. And everybody starts off thinking that they have to run it alone. And it isn't very long before a team begins to develop. And a team realizes that they have to help each other. The tough guys like to reject the team. They like to stay away from the team because they are enough, they're sufficient, they can do it by themselves. But they can't. And so ultimately the guys who take the risk to give someone else a hand without ever knowing whether or not that person is going to reach back to them and reciprocate and help them. But those people who take the risk are the people who go on and become the SEALs. Those are the people that understand that some things in life cannot be done all by yourself. It requires the team. So, as Sinek pointed that out, I really resonated with that story. I realized that is really the key to success in everything. There is no such thing as a self-made man. And the person who claims to be a self-made man is often just arrogant and ignores the people who really did contribute to their lives. See, everyone starts off dependent. Everyone. We all start as infants. We're dependent on a mother for food, for understanding, for love. We need the caring, we need the touch, we need the nurturing. And there's a point we're developing, and we say things like, I can do that all by myself. I'm going to do that. I can feed myself. I can walk. I don't need you to touch me. And we develop this independence. So what happens as we grow from dependence to independence. But that is not maturity. Independence is not maturity. Dependence, the recognition of dependence is important. The recognition of independence is important as a phase that we go through. But the interdependence, where we have to trust other people to give into our lives, and we have to make the contribution into other people's lives, that is real maturity. That is the beginning of success. It's the beginning of a life that matters. Okay, so if that really is the beginning of a life that matters, and interdependence is the highest level of maturity, we recognize that as we come to the end of our lives, there's another phase yet to come. And that phase is dependence, right back to the beginning. See, as we age, as we get old, even after my stroke, I went through this period of time in which I was completely dependent on somebody else. And it takes a level of maturity to realize that interdependence brings you back eventually to dependence. I think this is all part of the purpose of God, because he wants you dependent on him from the very beginning to the very end. So independence is actually a period of rebellion. And although we try to make that attractive in our culture, and we talk about musicians that are rebels and how fantastic they are, that they don't conform, that they're not a part of our, that they're taking brave new stances and risks, and they're doing things that are shocking. And these things are not signs of a mature society. These are things that are glorifying ignorance. They're glorifying rebellion, which is not attractive. And it's true of every art in any age. I mean, Robert Louis Stevenson, that we talked about in video 1, went through his rebellion against his parents and eventually ended up kind of shipwrecking his own life. He ended up not, having all kinds of problems with self-image and all kinds of things. He was a sickly kid, and he wasn't particularly deemed good-looking at the time. I don't see anything wrong with him, but he did. And that's kind of important to understand. And so there's a rejection of authority, rejection of things in your life that are there to contribute to the value you have to give, to make your life count at the end. There will be people who depend on your wisdom. So essentially what I'm trying to say in this segment is, and the things that have come back, is that we recognize that community, real community, is developed face-to-face. And in addition to that, what has happened, and I guess I need to make this this little side note in here, that the internet has contributed to our isolation. I saw a meme, or actually a music video recently, that was quite funny about a couple getting together just absolutely in love with each other, and their entire interaction, whether sitting on the couch and embracing each other, or in bed even, was turned away from each other and texting on the phone to get to the other person who was turned away, texting on the phone. And the interaction was being conducted online, and it was a very funny look at a very big truth in our society, that we tend to isolate ourselves via technology. And this is one of the reasons that I tell you that your true team and your true value, and whether you matter or not, will have nothing to do with being online. It'll have everything to do with the people that you develop face-to-face. One of the comments we got from the first video that we really want to be, we're going to do most of the comments because we're not getting a lot until we have more videos under our belt, I guess. We're going to be able to put most of these question answers together, maybe in a final video, I don't know. The comment that was made that there's an app, because there's an app for everything, right? I said stay offline and develop face-to-face, and because people are not developing face-to-face, there's an app called Neighbors, and so this guy signed up for Neighbors because it turns out that he doesn't get to meet his neighbors, doesn't get to know who they are. And that's just kind of indicative of our culture, I think, and part of the reason why great teams are built face-to-face, because we don't want to be living in isolation, although our culture is further and further pushing us in that direction. So if you build a face-to-face team, it's going to be more successful because it's going to be more unique than any other team out there. It's going to be more powerful. It's going to be more impactful, and that's what we're looking for. As we put this team together, we're saying, okay, how do we find this? I mean, the web might amplify it. It may tell us we need to go meet these people, and that would be the end result of any real meaningful team of of finding someone online is that you decide, I need to know more about this person. I need better communication. Online is a great way to keep in touch, but it's not a way to build the team. And so team will be built face to face. So how do you find the team? Where are they? Where are they hiding? Well, they're not hiding, but they're pursuing the things that matter. So if you are looking for opportunity, if you look at yourself and truly ask yourself, what matters to me? What causes matter to me? What are the things that are valuable? Whether it's some pro-life position or some social issue or some whatever it is that makes you burn inside, that makes you really feel that you need to communicate something. This would be a key. If you have a loved one die from cancer or lung disease or liver disease, I mean, there are associations built up around people who think this should not happen to other human beings. We can do something about it. We can raise money for medical research, and so on. I became a naturopath because of a small stroke I had over 10 years ago, and decided when it brought on early Alzheimer's, I felt like I don't want my contribution to end already. And so I became a naturopath because there were no solutions being offered in the MD world. I had studied the MD world as a hobby for years. I'd downloaded courses and things that I'm sure that the professors didn't even know were there out of med school, so that I could learn something about the human body and its functions and different systems at work, the endocrine system, the cardiovascular system. But these are important things to kind of know if you're interested in health, you know. So I got interested and I decided to study. And so I was studying away, and along came this incident in my life 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago. And the only side effect I had from it was to lose a little bit of balance. But the MRI showed that Alzheimer's had begun and was developing. I lost a father to Alzheimer's. I lost an uncle to Alzheimer's. I lost a grandfather to Alzheimer's. These diseases kill you, not just cause you memory loss, because the memory they actually stop you remembering is the auto functions of your body, the things like breathing. You don't last very long if you forget how to do that. Things like swallowing. And when I realized that I was having trouble with the memory of how to make my muscles work in my throat and how to swallow, I was scared. And I went back and went to research natural medicine. Well, part of the story of my life now is helping other people with a lot of things that have plagued our family. Alzheimer's, diabetes, other things, because these are things that people I loved and are close to died from. Well, these are issues. These are things. These are all opportunities. So where do I find my team? I find my team around the things that matter to me. I find team around my art, because there are people who develop things. Shout out to Jeff, who's doing these videos with me right now. He came to me, I think, because of content. There was important things I was doing, and that was stuff concerning God, concerning our faith, our mutual faith, and also then because we had the mutual interest in the arts, and he did video and I needed video, and those are things that brought us together. And the team begins to develop, see? So the team is not necessarily formal. It's not like you went out and hired, and built this company. Some teams are companies. Some teams do get built like that, and those teams are usually focused on some kind of bottom line and end up with financial success. So as I said to you before, I think success is something that does cross boundaries. It doesn't stay in one place. It doesn't limit itself to finances, or limit itself to spirituality, or limit itself to knowledge, or limit itself to art. These things work, and the art becomes better and the knowledge becomes greater and the advancements in medicine become more available and the knowledge of God becomes more ingrained. All of these things happen, and they're all parts of your success and the development of that message, which again, your circumstances are only the frame for. Okay, and that was in video 1, right? We talked about that. The circumstances are the frame around which you build your content and you communicate your life story. So finding your audience is based around your pursuit of those things that matter. And you will find people hanging out in the places that you hang out. And the face-to-face development of that team will be very organic. It'll happen in a very natural way. People will come together, drawn together by the same things. And as that happens, yes, then the quality emerges. Then the internet should be employed, and telephones and television and radio and every other form of technology that simply magnifies the voice of the message. And eventually your story gets told. Maybe your story is only known by a few. Maybe your story is told very privately to individual people. But these people become your lifelong partners in making something significant happen. That's part of storytelling. That's part of who you are. That's part of what makes success success. So finding your audience is about getting the causes, the things that move you, the things that matter to you, the things that move your heart in a certain direction. That's where you're going to find your audience, is in people whose heart moves in step with yours. So that's really the most important thing I can give you today to take away, is that develop your audience face-to-face. Make an effort to go see people, even if you find them online. Make an effort to get together with them and say, is this part of what my life is about? Is this part of my purpose? And so make things happen, because it's up to you to make them happen. But you're going to have to start. You're going to have to go where things are important to you. You're going to have to join the teams of those people that are making things happen. And you're not going to see yourself in competition with them or necessarily joining their organization, although you might. You could join their organization, you could start your own, but you're going to join with them in a cause. You're going to join with them at the heart. You're going to join with them with purpose. For me, Jesus Christ changed my life. And so people who pursue Christ, I pursue, because these people add something of value in knowing what it is to have the relationship that I want. Relationship is everything in knowing God. It is the purpose for which I was created. And part of the purpose that is reflected in my art, it's part of the purpose reflected in all the other areas of success. So, do I always write Christian music? No, I don't, as a matter of fact. I work across the many, many lines, and I've written comedy, I've written film, I've written books, and some of these books are for children and just to make people laugh, and some of the jokes are just to get a laugh, and some of the content is deeply spiritual, and some of it's just purely entertaining. I've written novels that the main characters are not Christians, and since they don't really exist, they can go to hell quite happily. A lot of people can't, but fictitious people can, and so I have that. I do those kinds of things. I write songs that aren't about God because they're about God's world. They're about the things that we find that are real. They're about the things that we touch. Now, my worldview as Christian, you're not going to find me writing things on purpose that are anti-God. Maybe in a character that I create that's anti-God, because I run into those people. But those are not the, that's not the core team that I'm building around me. The core team I'm building around me understands my purpose. They like my art, whether it's Christian art or not, most of the time. So they're free to make their own opinions about anything I create. Not everything I create I like. So I guess that would make it's important for other people to be able to reject certain things I do. I had a recent record review by a person who's very intuitively spiritual and tries to be godly, and I love her in spite of the fact that she wrote me one of the most negative reviews I've ever had. And she talks about my being inspired from some other place, and she's certainly welcome to the viewpoint. It doesn't bother me overly much because I know what my relationship with God is like. So I'm not too concerned about her review. But at the same time, I would like her to like it. I would like everybody to like everything I do. It's not realistic. It's not going to be realistic in your life either. That everything in your life isn't going to measure up. Everything in life is going to be done to your own satisfaction. You're going to live life with some regrets. But the key is not to have no regrets. The key is to really live. And the key is to share that life in such a way that it matters to other people. And that what is remembered afterwards is that it is valuable to them. So let's review. The very first thing that we talked about is learning to listen. Okay? To develop an audience, the first thing you have to do is become a part of an audience. Learn to listen to each other. Learn to listen to the other people who believe in the things that you think matter. So when we understand that, we will begin to promote them. We will begin to share those people with other people. And as we share relationships from person to person, from team to team, you will find that your team begins to grow. So if we're actually looking for a formula, okay, we start by learning to listen. We start by recognizing that this needs to be developed face to face. And it needs to be developed face to face because we are building the relationships that form the core of our tribe, which as our tribe grows becomes our audience. Your core people, the people that really matter to you, will be the most, they'll be the floor or the foundation of your economic security and in putting your message out there. They will be the bigger it is, the higher it is, the more you have an audience to begin with. And then, of course, your content is going to expand that audience. As your content relates to people, that audience will come to you, provided you have that core of people that wants to share you and your story with others. So you become a giver. You become a person who's willing to share other people's stories, because you do learn the most from a story. And that story gains momentum. And as it gains momentum, your audience is built. Join teams that matter to find an audience that believes you matter. Well, that of course brings us to the next possibility, the next video, which we're going to give you as well. And the real focus of that video is going to be opportunity, how you can live in the opportunity that I'm describing to you. So far I've given you some how-tos about how you're going to get going, but I want you to see what it's like to live in the opportunity that you create and to really live successfully day by day, because success, and I'll explain this in the next video, is a journey. It's not a destination. So we'll talk about that next. We'll hope to see you then.